and we're underway and racing. Stay on the brakes, goodness me, what a launch! The outside of turn 1 and takes the lead of the race.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are heading towards the end of another season, season number 8 here in APC, and with the competition lighting up, we have an incredible finish on our hands. While Andrew Chenkovan seems as though he may well have wrapped the title up, we have a number of new competitors right up the very top and challenging him. For example, George Chapman, who is now 4 in 4, and if you include sprint races, 5 in 5, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Almost Pro Championship. We are here for another round, race number 12 of the season, and my name is Joseph Black. Alongside me is Owen Boldero.
Well, hello, Joseph. In 23, it just felt so low grip, and because of that, it was physically undrivable. But in this game, it's, in my opinion, one of the better tracks. Maybe that's just because I'm better at it in this game, but it feels like the braking is a lot more consistent. One of the few times you'll hear me rave about F1 24, but this circuit feels a lot better on 24. And from what I played in 25, it feels just as good in that. So they've obviously fixed something, but what a race we have on our hands. A long DRS straight, so long, it's like 2 kilometers or something. It's the longest on the calendar, and that means long DRS trains, lots of overtaking, and last lap battles. So what a race we have on our hands here.
We certainly have a very good one up ahead of us, and we should be getting going very shortly. Daniel Riley will be the first driver across the line to take us to racing action, or at least qualifying action here in Las Vegas. And I think you're right, when it first came out, it was literally a run and gun circuit. It was so unpredictable, to say the least, in all of the curbs and riding over them, but now it is a lot more predictable and a lot more fun to drive. And if you're racing on 0-0 wings, as many drivers will be tonight, I would be one of them if I was on the circuit. Of course, there's reasons that I'm not on the circuit, but I have tested my times up against a few of the drivers, and well, let's just say I would have been competitive. But anyway, it's the racecraft that's my issue, and that is where we turn to the drivers and hope that they perform better than I would. And we've got most of them heading through the first sector. One of the McLarens right on the rear of one of the Ferraris, but yeah, it's going to be a very interesting one. Dan Riley up to the second sector split time 55.554, so 1,000th off of what would be a very aesthetic first sector or second sector split time. Now heading down the long straight, we can reach incredibly high speeds here, all the way up. Dan Riley is to, I believe that was 211 miles an hour. Incredibly quick time, and well, Dan Riley is going to head through the final couple of corners now and end up, well, he will be on pole position. We'll see where he stacks up against the rest of the grid, but he comes across the line with a 1 minute 31.4 to set us off. Big race for Dan Riley in the Drivers' Championship. 118 points, 20 points behind Kyle Stewart-Woodard, and 10 ahead of George Chapman in 5th place. But of course, George is trying to close in. But the battle for P, what will be P4 most likely with George Chapman right there, is on between Kyle and Dan. I know they've been very passionate about said battle over the last few weeks. And Dan, disappointed at his results last time out because he really felt as though it was an opportunity to get one over on Kyle. Then, if you look at the constructors, we have a new name on their Haas. You've got Brad Gibb and Jack Weaver, both in the standings, and they've got a lot of work to do to catch up to anybody else with only 3 rounds to go. They are, as it stands, 182 points behind Williams, so lots of work to do, but the battle for P2 in the championship is on. Of course, Ferrari sealed it last time out, and with 412, they are unbeatable. But we have a blueprint for what should be a very good round ahead of us. Chenkovan takes pole position, 31.2. Dan Riley in P2, 31.4. Kyle Stewart-Woodard, 31.7, who's shown decent pace over the last few weeks. Brad Gibb, 4th with a 31.8. And they are the 4 in the 31s. Then you have 5 in the 32s. And George Chapman uncharacteristically slow, 1 minute 35, 4-4, or 4-2-2 even. And we'll see whether that was a banker or whether it will be an actual lap as he heads down the straight and tries to get past the McLaren. Of course, he's had spats with McLarens in the past. Don't forget qualifying at Kota, but he gets past okay and looks as though he may well be taking the slipstream to what should be potentially a pole position time. Chenkovan on top at the moment, a 31-2. And, well, Chenkovan in the front going into the pit lane. And George Chapman, 1 minute 31.131.
Yeah, great lap there. Really, really good lap. A 131.131 is a really good lap for a banker. And don't forget, his lap was actually on used tyres because I'm not too sure what happened, but I can only presume he had like a major snap of oversteer or something. Because that's generally why you abort a lap and then go into it if you haven't invalidated. But going back to what you were saying a little bit earlier, Dan Riley and Kyle, they're going to want to start looking over their shoulder in the championship a little bit because George Chapman is actually flying up on them. I'm not 100% sure of the totals, but I believe he's only he's within the range of 15, 20 points behind them now, I think. So they're going to want to be looking over their shoulders because he is coming and he is coming fast.
Well, that's not something that you would be saying every day. But anyway, that's besides the point. You've got a good battle for P3 on, but it looks as though George Chapman just might take it pretty easily in the end and may well start to challenge Shackleton for that second place. But yeah, it's been mightily impressive, I think, is the term I would use to describe George Chapman's debut campaign, half a campaign in APC. He has just been so incredibly quick. And, well, food for thought for Chenkovan heading into F1 25.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a new game, though. Anything can happen in a new game. You never know who's going to be quick and who's not going to be quick in a new game. And from what I've played of 25, it does feel like a different game, thank God. But, yeah, you just don't know heading into a new game. And then some people improve faster than others on a new game. It takes some longer than others to get up to speed. So we could see next season some people start off towards the back and then elevate themselves up as the season goes on, just because that's the way, you know, a new game is.
Yeah, it always brings new competitors to the fore. Of course, I come from more the esports scene where Julian Klaffenbach and Angelo D'Ortenzio made their names this season and on this game. They were just able to crack the meta quickly. And, well, it'll be interesting to see where those two end up. As, well, they both made debuts in the top tier of weekly esports. And, well, they look to expand and potentially advertise themselves for esports teams in 2025 and for F1 25. But, yeah, it's an entirely different game. And it's an interesting debate because there's not always... the same drivers are not always the quickest. I mean, we've seen with, speaking of the F1 esports side, you've got Brendan Lee, who is, of course, a multiple-time champion. Very nice guy as well, from what I've met. But, yeah, it's just... new games can breed new metas. And for these drivers, it's about trying to conquer the meta. Not sure what George Chapman's doing. Really not sure what George Chapman... He just parked up on the straight. And, well, he's gotten going again. He just went and stopped after the pit lane. So I think potentially he was hoping to come into the pits, just miss the pit lane, and he's going to have to go again. We do have, well, a new name in the grid this evening. Well, I say a new name. It's a returning name.
It's a returning name, and that is Stuart GB. He is, I actually don't know his official name. I'll have to look at the spreadsheet, but I do know he is the most successful driver in APC history. So it's great to have him back. You know, it's great to have someone so historical back in the league, and let's see what he can do tonight, as he is nearly 2 tenths up in the first sector.
Well, that's a good start from him then. And, well, I can't believe you would put disrespect on Stuart Towers' name. And, well, he looks to attack this evening, just like he did 3 seasons in APC. He was the champion in season 1, 2, and 3 as Chenkovan, our latest champion-elect. goes up to the quickest time with a 1 minute 30.933. So an improvement there from our current champion, and we'll see what our only multiple-time champion can do this evening with his qualifying lap. At the moment, he's got a 32.1, which finds himself in 7th place. But he heads through the final couple of corners now. He's hit the wall on the exit of the chicane, so he's taken a bit of damage, and I think he may well be backing out of this lap. Indeed, he is. And, well, he just hit the inside of that wall there and cost himself a bit of time. Decided that he was not going to improve on that lap and came into the pits. So, multiple-time champion. He currently is not even into the 31s, let alone the 30s. So, he's got a bit of work to do, but that 32.1 was only his banker. Many of those drivers have a 32 as their banker. So I think he's just settling back in, because he's, of course, not raced for about 5 seasons. So we'll see where he ends up going. If he starts to bed himself in, then he should be very high up the field. But yeah, we will certainly see how that one ends up going. But for the meantime, he finds himself in 7th place behind Ethan Shackleton and ahead of Connor Stewart-Woodard. Speaking of Stewart, in that sense, because it's Stewart Tower and then the Stewart-Woodards, I think Connor's got to get a shift on. He's got to find some pace, otherwise he could see himself quite easily the slowest driver on what is a rapidly improving field.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as Jack Weaver goes P3 there with a 1:31.283, really good lap there from him. And that pushes him even further down to P9, does it, Connor? And then Brian Moore will be looking to improve on his final run. I don't think anyone now that's into the pits will come out again, probably till about the 3-minute mark or so. So we're heading into the final runs now for anyone that is not in the pits.
Yeah, indeed we are, and it's the last chance saloon for a lot of them, as well, Jack Weaver put himself up into 3rd place initially, has been displaced since by Daniel Riley, who is showing impressive pace this week and only 3/10 off of Andrea Chenkovan. Could we have a dark horse on here at Las Vegas?
Well, you never know. The nature of Vegas is that, you know, anything can happen. With it being so long and so many DRS straights, obviously there's 2. It's not too many, but they're so long that anything can happen. You know, you can see, like Brazil, you can see drivers staying in DRS with the drivers at the top that you wouldn't normally expect them to stay with them. So anything can happen here, and it is a high possibility we could get an entire field of 10 in a DRS straight. I mean, I managed to stay in a DRS train with Luca Rapazza here when I raced in a league with him. That was back in September, and it was in a league called MRL. So anything can happen. If I can keep up with Luca Rapazza, who is a 1.5 a lap quicker than me, anyone can keep up with him. Anything can happen.
Fun fact about Luca Rapazza, and specifically Las Vegas. I had a really cool quip lined up for the end of a race that Luca Rapazza was racing in. It was around Christmas time. He was racing against Jan Halliday, and the quip was going to be, and it's Happy Halliday, like Happy Holidays. I don't remember exactly what it was going to be, but it was going to be something along the lines of like holiday, Halliday. Luca Rapazza won. I said it's Happy Halliday for Luca Rapazza. Doesn't make any sense, but I was having fun, I guess, and it ended up not looking too bad, because, I mean, I never got caught, I never got told off. The only time I did was about 20 minutes later. I was watching it back and I went, oh my god. So, hey, I've got history at Las Vegas, and, well, we shall see. And with Luca Rapazza specifically, but we'll see.
Yeah, another joke you could have had, Halliday is the name of the guy that created the Oasis in a film called Ready Player One, if you've watched that film, so you could have made a joke about that, maybe. What a film, yeah, Ready Player One. Big film.
I will claim, because it's true, to be one of those who read the book before the film, so I'm a true OG of the
I did not
One
read the book
series.
before the film. I didn't even read books back then, so I only really started reading books a couple of years ago.
I stopped reading books a couple of years ago, so there was a crossover point. Anyway, yeah, Ready Player 2, good book as well. Hope that they make that into a film soon. Anyway, 2 minutes left.
It's already in development.
Is it? Beautiful. Well, that's exciting.
Yes.
My favourite book series as a child was the Uglies series. They made that into a film series, or are looking to. They made the first one. It's not quite as good as the books, but it's good enough, you know. Anyway, 2 minutes left in the session, and we've got a few drivers out on the circuit. You've got both the Haas drivers, George Chapman looking to topple off Andrea Chenkovan. You've got Brian Moore on a 1:32.9, and we've got a bit of information, some down on the track information from Kyle Stewart-Woodard. He has gone fastest in Sector 3 of all, with a 35.4, simply because of slipstream. If you look at some of the drivers without the slipstream effect, so for example Daniel Riley's lap, his was in the third sector a 35.9, so there's 1.5 seconds difference with that slipstream. That's insane. Speaking of Dan Riley, he's come back into the pits. He will not be improving on his lap. A 31.2 is the best that he's going to get. And, well, I think he could be dropping down the order as everyone's out on the circuit, apart from Dan Riley and Stuart Tower, who invalidated on his last outlap, came into the pits, has not come back out since, so won't be improving. And, well, we've got everybody else, all of the other 8 drivers on their final runs. And, well, Jack Weaver is going to lead us into them.
Yeah, the slipstream here is so important. I think the 2 McLarens and the 2 Ferraris, by the looks of it, are in relatively decent positions. If I was the Ferraris, I'd be having Shackleton behind Chenkovan, which is the formation they have chosen. And then maybe I'd have Kyle behind Connor. No, Connor ahead of Kyle, sorry. Just to maximise the positions that you are getting for your team. You know, Kyle is in P5 at the moment, Connor in P9, so maybe you can maximise the positions that your team get just by a little bit of clever slipstream, which actually the Ferraris are not doing, which I suppose makes sense in the circumstances.
Yeah, and, well, we'll see where Brad Gibb ends up going, the second Haas driver on the circuit, and he's just behind Jack Weaver as they head down the long back straight. This is where slipstream is going to play into it. I don't know whether he is actually going to get slipstream. I don't think he's close enough, but I think he's close enough to make a pretty decent stab of it, and they go into the heavy braking zone of the chicane with the checkered flag waving, and Dan Riley and Stuart Tower's sessions officially over. Jack Weaver, it's come around the final braking zone, is now going to come around the final corner, and we'll see whether number 72 Haas is able to go, more specifically how Brad Gibbs is going to be able to go. 3rd place for Jack Weaver, 5th for Brad Gibbs, so it's a uncharacteristically slower lap for Brad Gibb. And he is not going to improve much in terms of position. 5th place is where he's going to go, but his teammate displaced Dan Riley on the podium, and in 3rd place, Brian Moore was improving by half a second in the first 2 sectors. 3rd sector beckons, and we'll see where he ends up going. He may well jump Connor Stewart-Woodard as he comes up to the line. It's going to be a 1:32.359. He does indeed jump Connor Stewart-Woodard, and now all eyes turn to George Chapman, and to see whether he can get those 2 tenths required to catch up to Chenkovan. Kyle Stewart-Woodard looks like he's either retired on track or crashed into the wall in the 2nd sector. George Chapman up to the line, 1:31.044. Chenkovan will not be beaten today unless it's by his own teammate who's 7 tenths down. So Andrea Chenkovan is going to take home a pole position time, and he actually goes even faster, a 1:30.765. Andrea Chenkovan has taken the gamble here in Las Vegas, and it's certainly paid off. The Ferrari on pole position.
What a lap there. A 1:30.765 in session is a really good lap time there, but don't forget, anything can happen at Las Vegas. Qualifying isn't exactly anything to go on, you know. 3 tenths in a race is very easily turned over by the power of DRS here. I reckon, realistically, everyone from about P1 to P9, P10, maybe the entire grid is going to be in a DRS train together, so anything can happen. You can finish anywhere here at Las Vegas, even if you're one of the further down drivers.
Yeah, it absolutely anything could happen, and well, that is your grid for the race this evening. Andrea Chenkovan taking that pole position, and well, 10 drivers on the grid. How many times have we been able to say that this season? But yeah, Andrew Chenkovan taking that pole position away ahead of George Chapman in P2, Jack Weaver in P3, and Dan Riley in 4th place. Then Brad Gibb in P5, Carl Stewart Woodard P6, Ethan Shackleton a surprisingly low P7 with Stuart Tower, Brian Moore and Connor Stewart Woodard rounding out the field. But for Ethan Shackleton, that is surprising.
Yeah, it is a bit surprising, but maybe Vegas is a weird circuit because it's not a circuit everyone is good at, which partially comes down to the nature of the grip. Some people don't like the low grip feeling of Las Vegas, I suppose is the best way to put it. It doesn't suit certain driving styles. Driving styles that break a little bit earlier are rewarded at Las Vegas is the best way I can put it. If you're a late breaker, your driving style, especially in that second sector, will be punished. So maybe that's what it comes down to, just a sense of driving style.
Yeah, it's well, some circuits suit some drivers, some circuits do not, and this could be one for Ethan Shackleton that he's going to struggle with. But he's going to have a potential battle here with a former rival, Stuart Tower, in the race, and well, they have been scrapping in the past. They had a fight for that 3rd season title, which was taken, of course, by Stuart Tower. So yeah, it'll be a very interesting one between those two drivers as they well, they make acquaintance once again on the circuit. We're ready very soon to get going. The time on the clock is 20:54, but it's going to be about midnight in Las Vegas. It's going to be about midnight Saturday, I think, is when the race set off last time out. I think it might have been about 10 p.m. in real life when it set off last time. Either way, we're under the lights here in Las Vegas and we are ready to get ourselves going for another round of your APC season. We got Andriy Chenkovan on pole, who could strengthen his championship lead and could potentially set himself up to win it next round. And, well, I believe, if my maths are correct, if he wins this race, he will need to pick up... if he wins this race and Shackleton doesn't score, he would need to pick up just 1 point from the final 2 rounds. And, of course, Qatar and Abu Dhabi being the last 2 rounds... Qatar actually dropping on the same day as the F1 25 release date. So while we say goodbye to one game, we'll wave hello to another, and we could be seeing Andriy Chenkovan crowned at a perfect time in the championship and in the game cycle, with the former game going to finish. So you have just 2 more rounds after this one on the 27th of May, and then on the 3rd of June, the 27th of May being, of course, the final, the Iconic Edition release date, and then the real edition releases on the 30th. And if you're buying the Iconic Edition, you're a lunatic. So we shall see you there on the May the 30th. But F1 25 just around the corner. Good opportunity to finish the game off in style for Andriy Chenkovan, and I'm sure he's going to want to do that within the next round or 2. But we shall see, as we have momentarily lost Owen. So he's not had the greatest technical luck over the last few rounds, but we have... I mean, he's gotten my luck. I think I've lucked out in the last few rounds in the fact that my hot fixes have been actually successful. Owen is just the one with technical gremlins this time, and hopefully he will be coming back in this race and watching along as the 5 lights get underway very, very shortly. The formation is underway in Chenkovan and George Chapman desperate to get going. No love lost between the two, as the battle between them could be supreme. And well, they are both so far ahead of the rest of the field, currently being backed up by Jack Weaver. Despite the fact he has no authority, the drivers behind are staying in behind, and they're also staying in behind his teammate, who is... I mean, they're both just holding up the pack. We'll see as they all form out towards the grid for race day. And actually, Brad Gibb has gotten past Dan Riley on the circuit, so he is desperate to get it going.
First of all, can you hear me again? Can you hear me again?
Yes, I was just about to message you saying let me know when you're back, and I have messaged you saying let me know when you're back. But good.
Yeah,
Good to see
I
you
got
back.
it. I got it back. Yeah, I had a PC crash. It randomly happens. That's the downsides of having such a old and rubbish PC, I suppose. But yeah, we have a really interesting race on our hands. Qualifying here at Vegas means absolutely nothing. So realistically, there's no way you can predict what happens. So here we are as now the drivers all form up and we get ready to go racing at Las Vegas.
Well, I'm going to back an Ethan Shackleton win. I just think that'd be fun. Anyway, we will see.
Oh, that's a prediction.
25 laps right ahead of us here in APC. And the action's underway. Chenkovan gets off to a good start. George Chapman just has to tuck him behind into the first corner. Chenkovan covers off the inside line, and he covers himself off too far. He goes wide. Through goes George Chapman. Through goes Dan Riley. Jack Weaver tries to stamp his authority through as well, but he runs wide, and Chenkovan gets back through. But the two Haas cars flanking the Ferrari as they head down to the next braking zone. Chenkovan has the straight line speed to hold on to it, and he gets through. Now it's the turn of Brad Gibb to try and defend ahead of Carl Stewart Wood. He's been successful, but for Chenkovan, he's dropped down to third place. He's not managed to make the most of that qualifying on pole position, and so he drops down to third place. He's going to try and make his way back up, but it's not an ideal start from your champion-elect as we head down to the straight for the first time. And, well, it's George Chapman, as we've said many a time so far this season, and especially over the last few weeks, in the lead of this race, ahead of Dan Riley. That's not something we've said a lot recently, and Jack Weaver could be trying to get through Andrea Chenkovan, and does so with the straight line speed, but Chenkovan, we've seen before, has got incredible straight line speed to get back through. Dan Riley takes the lead of the race here in Las Vegas, and the Kick Sauber could be on his way to taking what could be a very, very good victory, an unexpected victory. He's certainly an early contender. Chenkovan looks around the outside of Jack Weaver, can't quite make it through, and stays in behind for the time being. We end the first lap with Dan Riley leading the way, and George Chapman just behind, then a 1.8 second gap back to Jack Weaver.
Yeah, frantic start, but big Jack Weaver has lost DRS. That is so big here at Vegas. That gap is not going to shrink very easily. It's so hard because of the power of DRS. It's so hard to get a gap down once you lose DRS. If these two, Dan Riley and George Chapman, can work together, they will fly away at the front, which currently it does not look like they are, as they are fighting side by side.
Yeah, they're side by side as they head into the braking zone. Who's later on the brakes? It's going to be Dan Riley, who manages to make his way through. And, well, George Chapman just having to sit in behind. He's forced to wait for just another couple of corners before he can launch an attack on Dan Riley. Once again, he may well be waiting for the DRS straight. Of course, DRS is activated on this lap, and they're going to get the benefit of it all the way down the back straight. And, well, George Chapman is well placed to take full advantage of it, sitting in the slipstream of the Kick Sauber, opening up the DRS in just a couple of moments' time. He's just crossed the detection zone, so he will definitely be getting it. He might not even need it as he pulls alongside, and he's going to pull ahead, in fact. So that is George Chapman up into the first place, and Dan Riley sits in P2. But the fighting that they've done over that last lap means that Andrea Chenkovan has almost managed to make his way back into DRS. And I think, in fact, down the main straight, he's back into DRS. So a great opportunity squandered by George Chapman and Dan Riley as we head on to the third lap. They had a chance to break away and break free in this race, but instead, they've bottled it.
Yeah, that comes from that fighting in the first sector, I think. If I was Dan Riley, I would have let George Chapman go, because I'm going to put myself in Dan Riley's mindset for a minute, and he wants to win this race, and in his mind, George Chapman is the faster driver. He needs to stay with him, and the easiest way to stay with him is to have him behind him. But that's not the way to do it here at Vegas. At Vegas, it's easy to stay in DRS if you are smart, and what I would have done is I wouldn't have fought at this phase of the race George Chapman too hard, just because you can't fix your race in the first couple of laps. It's more important at Vegas to build that gap up. If he could have built that gap with George Chapman to Andrea Chenkovan, he could have probably had a 5-second gap by the end of lap 10. But there we are. That's just hindsight, really, isn't it? And I'm not in the car at the end of the day.
And Dan Riley potentially not used to fighting up at the top and just trying to make the most of it while he still can. He's trying to follow through George Chapman, but 9/10 behind. George Chapman has had an incredible last lap in comparison and breaks for him potentially. Dan Riley won't even have DRS as they head to the next DRS straight, so that could be Dan Riley under pressure from Andrea Chenkovan in behind. And I think now he's starting to realise that he needs to sit in and settle back in behind the car in front and just work together with them. And it's the fastest lap of the race, firstly for George Chapman, but then Andrea Chenkovan steals it away. A 1:33 is the lap time he sets. And, well, he tries to launch an assault on Dan Riley now as he's only 3/10 behind into the DRS straight. Not sure how long this one is, but I certainly know that it's too long, or not long enough even, for an overtake. You've got the two Haas drivers as well who appear to be close together in pace, but just working together at the moment. Jack Weaver and Brad Gibb, who are happy to stay in 4th and 5th, so a little bit more head on their shoulders as they head through the first sector. And they just need to manage it. They know that they're only about a 5th of the way through this race, although we are a 5th of the way through this race, so time flies when you're having fun. But yeah, Dan Riley not in that DRS anymore, so certainly an opportunity squandered on George Chapman. And now an opportunity opens up for the Williams to try and break that gap.
Yeah, but it wasn't exactly a great time to break DRS, I'll say, because now Andrea Cenkovan's going to get an easy opportunity to get into P2, which he does, and then into DRS on George Chapman. If you're George Chapman, you probably would have been wanting to break DRS sort of right at the start of the first DRS, right at the end of the first DRS straight on that corner there. That would have been the ideal place to break DRS. And look at that. From that, Andrea Chenkovan has gone from 1.3 seconds behind to just 4/10 back.
Yeah, impressive stuff from Andrea Chenkovan as he sets yet another fastest lap of the race, and Dan Riley comes under pressure from Jack Weaver. Doesn't make the move, but just stays in behind. But yeah, Andrea Chenkovan has taken an incredible opportunity here, and he's grabbed it with both hands and might now be starting to pressure George Chapman for that race lead as they head down the straight for yet another time. But Jack Weaver is going for a move once again on Dan Riley, and he's down at the inside. Can he make this move stick? Yes, he can. Dan Riley doesn't quite have the pace to hold him up and may well be looking for an opportunity. Not quite yet, but he certainly looked like he was trying to shape one up. But yeah, Dan Riley has really struggled for pace ever since the race started. He's coming under pressure now from the two Haas drivers as Chenkovan makes his way past George Chapman. He now takes the lead of the race.
Yeah, George Chapman had a really big snap of oversteer coming out of turn 6, which just meant he just sort of pulled over to the inside. He knew Chenkovan had the better run coming out of the corner, and he allowed him through, which actually is going to give him the chance to get back through here on this DRS straight.
Yeah, and in the meantime, the second Haas of Brad Gibb getting through, and Connor Stewart-Woodard having a moment in that second sector and dropping the rear. George Chapman gets back through on Andrea Chenkovan, just as Chenkovan got through on that last DRS straight. And George Chapman is back up into the lead of the race. They are 1.3 seconds ahead. And this is where maturity comes into it, I think. Because Chenkovan and George Chapman, they've fought for a lead plenty of times. They've taken victories in APC plenty of times as well. So they know exactly what they're doing at this point and how much it is benefiting them. They've broken that gap to Jack Weaver to 1.6 seconds. So for Dan Riley, I think he'll be watching these two break that gap and be absolutely ruining what's happened earlier on with the fact that he was unable to stay within. He just got a little bit too giddy and too in above his head, and then he suffered the consequences. Brad Gibb and Dan Riley fighting down the main straight and down the DRS straight as well, but Dan Riley getting back behind Brad Gibb, getting back through and up into that 4th place. But yeah, it's going to be a good battle between the drivers as it looks like George Chapman has had another snap of oversteer, potentially a poor setup for the Williams, and he's been overtaken once again by Andrea Chenkovan.
Exact same thing as last lap, just had a big snap of oversteer, touched that inside curb on that left-hander a little bit too much, and I think I know where that comes from. For some reason round here, in the first stint, the mediums are god-awful. I don't know what it is, but past sort of lap 5, they just have no grip. So I think that's what it is. It doesn't look like to me George Chapman has any traction control on. So I'm assuming that he's struggling with the tyres, as I've been on board with him for sort of a lap and a half now, and it seems like he's snapping through every single corner. So I think he's getting a really bad graining phase with those mediums, and honestly, an undercut could work.
It could very potentially. We'll see where they end up going. And Chenkovan actually
Chenkovan in
to come into the pit lane and make the switch from the mediums. So you just mentioned an undercut might work for George Chapman. Well, we've got Andrea Chenkovan going for it instead. So we'll see where the Croat ends up coming out in relation to the other drivers as he switches onto the hard compound tyre. But we are on lap number 7 of this race now, and you said that they would last about 6 laps. Or I believe it was actually 5 laps you mentioned, but there we go. We are past that threshold now, and it is the time for the drivers to strike and try and get up further forward. Those who are making that switch, Chenkovan being the first of the lot onto a set of the hard compound of tyre, but we'll see where he ends up going. He's now 2.1 seconds off of Brian Moore, who's the next car up the road, and Brian Moore now has an 8-second gap up to Ethan Shackleton up ahead, so there is levels to this game, and at the moment Brian Moore not quite on that level, but Andrea Chenkovan certainly has the pace. Dan Riley coming under pressure from Brad Gibb. He's not going to have DRS down the long back straight once again, so issues for Dan Riley in terms of having pace overall. I think his qualifying pace flattered, and now his race pace is being punished for it. Brad Gibb to the inside, might even get through before the corner. Indeed he does. Kyle Stewart-Woodard could be going for a move as well. He does not, and he stays in behind the Kicksauber in 5th place, but he's certainly looking to threaten. And Brad Gibb, who's making his way back into the DRS of Jack Weaver, I think the two Haas drivers are working together here, and I think it's working very well.
Yeah, it's working really, really well for them, working together. At Vegas, it's a really powerful tool to have, to be able to work with your teammate, because you can keep tricky people at bay in that DRS range. But something to note about the undercut, the reason it works is because on the flip side, I said the mediums are god-awful. They go off so quickly for some reason. The hards last for absolutely ever. So, for context, I did, in the same race I raced Luca Rapazza, I did 22 laps on hards just because of the way the race was on my first set of hards. And I was on 32% afterwards. Oh my word! Sorry, I've just witnessed Connor go straight into the wall at turn 4. Oh my word, that's a big shunt.
That is huge. We just cut to it with Ethan Shackleton. That is absolutely massive. And that is your first safety car of the race. Then Connor Stewart-Woodard, we said he needed to raise his levels today. Well, he's raised one of his tyres off of the car. So the safety car is out for Chenkovan, Stuart Tower and Ethan Shackleton. That is horrible timing. It's perfect timing for George Chapman, for Jack Weaver, for Dan Riley, for Kyle Stewart-Woodard and for Brian Moore, as to the fact that they can now come into the pits. And even Brad Gibb as well may not suffer from the delay that he may well face in the pit lane from his teammates up ahead. So it's perfect timing for everybody, apart from those who've already come into the pit lane, and they will be absolutely devastated.
Yeah, well, scrap everything I've just said about the undercut, because it no longer matters. On the flip side, I don't think the tyre offset of like a couple of laps is going to make that much of a difference at Vegas, just because the tyre wear is virtually nothing anyway. So I don't think that's going to play a role in this final stint. This will be the final stint now that we are on, well, the safety car will go in on end of lap 10. So we'll have 15 laps of racing. So they'll stay on those hards comfortably, and pending no other safety cars, they'll be on them to the end of the race. And I personally don't feel the tyre offset that those that have just pitted under the safety car, such as, you know, George Chapman, Jack Weaver, I don't think the tyre offset will play a role for them.
Yeah, George Chapman at the top. Chenkovan has not lost out too much. He's in P2, so it's pretty much as you were with the top two. But, of course, you've got, for example, the likes of Stuart Tower and Ethan Shackleton, who look as though they may well have lost a little bit of time. Stuart Tower, to be fair, 6th place, not too bad for the 3-time champ. But, yeah, it's not an ideal scenario. of course, as well as the fact that you could have taken the opportunity if you were lucky and came into the pits just that little bit more perfectly timed. But yeah, you've got George Chapman up in the lead of the race, just ahead of Andrea Chenkovan, and Jack Weaver in third, with Kyle Stewart-Woodard in fourth place. And I'm not sure why, it's just brought my Windows menu up, so apologies for that one. Anyway, we're back to the race, and we're back to lap number 9 of 25. I think the safety car is going to go around for one more lap, and then we'll be getting back to green flag racing. But yeah, George Chapman is in a prime opportunity. He has a great chance to take the victory in this race if he's able to hold off Andrea Chenkovan, and then he will go an incredible and unprecedented 5 in 5, 6 in 6 if you include sprint race victories as well. But yeah, George Chapman is certainly looking at the pace of the field as the F1 24 game cycle comes to an end. As I mentioned, only 2 more rounds on this godforsaken game, and then F1 25 will be out. And I believe, oh, and you've just had a PC crash, and I believe you may well just be back.
I didn't have a PC crash. I was fiddling around with my mic because it was being weird. My PC didn't crash, my mic was being weird, but it's perfectly fixed now.
Well, I said earlier on in the broadcast, the technical gremlins I faced in the first sort of 2/3 in the season, it's now your turn to face them. As well, you were back to a very good setup, and you said it yourself. So I think you set yourself up for that one, I'm afraid. But yeah, there we go. Hopefully, you are now back for the rest of this evening's action, and what a race we have on our hands. George Chapman and Andrea Chenkovan up ahead. Huge crash for Connor Stewart-Woodard, causing a safety car and nullifying the power the undercut had with Andrea Chenkovan. No longer in a strong position, despite a gamble to come into the pit lane 2 laps earlier than everybody else. 2 laps earlier because of the safety car, which is when everybody else came in. The only people that pitted on that lap after Andrea Chenkovan, nobody pitted on the same lap, but the only people to pit on the lap after were Stuart Tower and Ethan Shackleton, who was not involved in that battle at the top. And well, it's interesting to see the Ferrari's pace, to be honest, because it really hasn't been what you would expect.
No, it hasn't, and as I said, maybe he just doesn't like Vegas. Las Vegas is a very, very selective circuit in who likes it and who doesn't. As I said, it suits certain driving styles and doesn't suit others, so it could be something as simple as that.
It could potentially. I mean, we'll hopefully get the opportunity to speak to him after the race. But yeah, we potentially are going once again on this lap for, well, it will be the 11th lap around this circuit. We'll be almost at the halfway mark. And George Chapman leads the way, Andrea Chenkovan in that 2nd place. And well, this has been a fascinating race so far. It's been one of the most exciting races I think we've had so far in this APC season. And it certainly feels as though it's nowhere near its end. Safety car is going to come in this lap, and George Chapman will be leading us away back to green flag racing. We've seen him catch drivers off guard on safety car restarts before. Is he going to be able to do the same thing again? We'll have to wait and see. Andrea Chenkovan is going to be the car in behind, and he will know George Chapman's safety car restarts very, very well, because of course he sat behind him on a number of occasions. But this time it is going to be the Williams, who waits a very long time to get underway. Chenkovan pulling alongside, waiting too long. George Chapman's back. Chenkovan took a second, so did Jack Weaver, and he's come under threat from Kyle Stewart-Woodard. Down the inside, the McLaren goes into the first corner, and he tries to make his way through, but he's outbraked himself, and back through goes Jack Weaver, and he stamps his authority once again in this race, and he moves up into P3 once again, as a hairy moment on the safety car restart went to pretty much nothing, as he held onto it. But Kyle Stewart-Woodard once again looking down the inside of Weaver, but he could come under pressure from Dan Riley in behind. Dan Riley, though, has a bit of a wobble on the exit, which costs him a bit of time and means that he's not going to pressure the McLaren. But those two look like they might be brewing up a battle between Weaver and Stewart-Woodard, the only Stewart-Woodard left in this race, and we'll have to see how that one develops. But Stewart-Woodard definitely looking very racy against the Haas, and they've now lost 1.6 seconds to the cars in front.
Yeah, the top two are absolutely gone. I think in some sense, Andreychenko falling behind so much on that safety car restart actually helped them because they weren't fighting down that turn at that straight at the end of turn 2. So maybe that helped them a little bit, but they're now 2 seconds clear and absolutely flying, and realistically, they're probably not going to look back.
Yeah, I don't think they will, especially with the pace they both demonstrated this season. As I mentioned, our potential champion. As there's contact between Dan Riley and Carl Stewart-Woodard, and Dan Riley picks up a 3-second time penalty for that. Well, it wasn't even for the drama. It was for the fact that he went off of the circuit. DRS is enabled on lap number 11 of this race. And it's going to be a good opportunity for them once again to close down the straight, as we have battling between the Haas and the Haas, the McLaren, the Williams, any car on this circuit you want. They are having big scraps, and it's going to continue down this straight, almost 4 wide. It's not even got enough space for 4 wide, but they're going to attempt it nonetheless. And they filter out, of course, as Carl Stewart-Woodard taps the wall on the exit, and that means Jack Weaver can get his way back through. But in the meantime, it allows Dan Riley up into 3rd place and Brad Gibb in 4th to break that gap. Carl Stewart-Woodard trying to fight with Jack Weaver, can't quite hold that inside line, and Jack Weaver makes his way through. Stuart Tower is in 5th place, not in DRS range of Brad Gibb, and Jack Weaver in 6th place, not in DRS range of Tower himself. So this could have cost them a lot of time, as that's cost them a bit more. Jack Weaver wobble, contact with Carl Stewart-Woodard, and it's lost them even more time. 2.5 seconds up to the cars in front, and that opens up the door for Shackleton and for Brian Moore as well.
Yeah, just a lot of scrapping going on at the moment. Ethan Shackleton will be hoping he can capitalise on this, because he spent a lot of the race sort of at the back a little bit. So, yeah, we've got some interesting battles brewing.
We certainly do, and that is a driver going round. It is really not Ethan Shackleton's day, and he's gone round in the chicane, lost a bit of his front wing, and I think surely he's going to have to come into the pit with that level of damage. But he can come in, hopefully, I don't know if he'll have a new set of mediums, but he would ideally come in for a new set of mediums, but really not his day. Jack Weaver continues his fight with Carl Stewart-Woodard, and they are now 3 seconds off of Stuart Tower, who is still in the DRS of Brad Gibb and Dan Riley. Brad Gibb and Dan Riley, who've just swapped positions, and Brad now up into the podium positions. Dan Riley, I think he's gotten very lucky to still be in contention for this podium, but he's certainly worked very hard for it, and he's now only just behind it.
Yeah, I don't think luck is necessarily a bad thing. Some of the best racing drivers in the world have luck on their side, but he's kept himself in contention well, and if he can stay in DRS and sort of be 4 tenths back on that final lap, then 100% he will have a podium potentially on his hands.
Yes, Jack Weaver looked down the inside of Carl Stewart. It didn't make the move, but just certainly stayed in contention. But yeah, it would be very good for Dan Riley in his battle for, of course, what will probably turn out to be 4th place in the Drivers' Championship now, with George Chapman showing incredible pace. But yeah, he's talked a lot about the battle between himself and Carl Stewart-Woodard, and the fact that he has been the podium has been elusive on many occasions so far. He's battling for one here, but that 3-second time penalty could cost him a lot, with Brad Gibb just trying to fight with him at the moment. And Stuart Tower, don't forget, in the background looking for a very successful return to the APC League. And he's in 5th place at the moment. He'll be 4th after penalties are applied, but he's only just within DRS of these two. So he's going to have to get a wriggle on if he wants that podium. Brad Gibb down the inside of Dan Riley, trying to hold on to the position. Can he do so? Yes, he can. And, he does so successfully. That is the 3rd place going back to Brad Gibb. And this battle continues on. It's been ferocious between these two, and it's still waging on. Brad Gibb in 13th. Dan Riley in 14th. In the meantime, Jack Weaver got back through on Carl Stewart-Woodard, and he's in 6th place as it stands. 4 seconds now off of Stuart Tower in front. So the gaps are filtering out, and the main battle seems to be this one for P3.
Yeah, we're actually starting to have a bit of a field spread, which I'm going to be honest, really surprises me. I wouldn't have thought that would happen. But it looks like Dan Riley is going to take that P3 back down this DRS straight as DRS will open now. It's so late down this straight, but you still get so much straight that you to use the DRS, and up to P3 he goes.
Yeah, there's a reason it's so late on the circuit, and well, that's exactly what has been demonstrated here as Dan Riley gets back through. Even though it's so late on the circuit, it didn't matter because he made his way through anyway, and he moved up into that final podium spot once again. Brad Gibb trying to pressure once again, and well, it's rinse and repeat for another lap. Carl Stewart did momentarily drop out of the DRS of Jack Weaver. He's back into it, and he's looking to try and fight once again for that P6, a P6 that's been hotly contested so far throughout this stint as they lost DRS to the cars in front. Brad Gibb looked to the inside of Dan Riley, didn't make the move, and well, stayed in position for the time being. But there is a lot of scraps going on the circuit, it is fair to say, and well, they are, as you mentioned, a field spread. That is because they are starting to try and fight with each other, and when they fight with each other, they lose copious amounts of time to the cars in front, and well, they start to drop back into the cars in behind, which is the exact reason why those gaps have opened up. It's because potentially they're lacking a bit of temperament in their fighting. That is exactly what befell Daniel Riley in the battle for the lead, and that's exactly what has befell Jack Weaver and Carl Stewart Woodard in that battle for what would have been P4 is now a battle for P6.
Yeah, and if we're talking about field spread, this is something we're going to get a lot more of heading into F1 25. So, from what I've played of the F1 25 beta, Dirty Air is very powerful, like insanely powerful. And what I've noticed is it's really bad when you're within a second of the car ahead of you. So I think heading into F1 25, there's going to be a lot more strategy playing into it, in the sense of you need to know the right time to drop into DRS on your opponent and drop out of it. Drop out, cool your tyres, come back in, overtake. It's not just going to be an endless DRS train like you see in esports nowadays, because Dirty Air is so powerful, like insane. It affects how you drive like tenfold. You cannot, if you're in front, you have such an advantage because you can drive normally. The person behind you in 25 cannot. They have to brake so much earlier and be so much more careful. And if you're running no traction control, it's a very difficult. So field spread is going to be something I think we're going to see a lot more of heading into 25.
As a no traction user myself, I'm slightly nervous about the game now that you've said that, but I'm sure it'll all be fine. And I'm sure that all the leagues will be allowing me to have medium traction anyway, so it doesn't really matter anyway, because I'm not at that high level of the esports drivers. But you never know, one day I could get back up there. Dan Riley gets back through on Brad Gibb. Dan Gibb? As well, clearly they're getting married because of how close they are on the circuit. But yeah, Dan Riley back up into third place. As that's another soundbite for our soundboard in the Discord server, potentially me wedding off Dan Riley and Brad Gibb. But anyway, their battle for P3 continues on, and their battle for the custody of their children will continue on for a very long time. Fastest lap of the race for George Chapman as Brad Gibb down the inside of Dan Riley, trying to make his way through, and he's going to be later on the brakes, making it nice and plain and cleanly. But he runs himself wide, and Dan Riley senses the opportunity to go around the outside, switching to the inside, but he can't quite make that switch to the inside and just has to sit in behind. DRS is going to be on his side as he pulls to the outside once again. Brad gives him the space. Is he going to allow him the position, though? Is he going to be later on the brakes? He's going to be much later on the brakes, and it was either, well, you can try and make the move, but you're going to go into the wall, or I hold on to P3, said Brad Gibb. And Dan Riley, sensibly this time, backed out of it, didn't make it, and just has to live to fight another day for that third place. But in the background, Stuart Tower leaning, he is looming in the background. I'm thinking of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, I think is the connection between the two. And he's only 1.5 seconds behind. If they do any fighting like we've seen earlier on, then he could be drawn right back into it.
Yeah, I think the move from Brad Gibb was a little bit silly. I think, especially in that turn 3 at Las Vegas, it's not really a place to make a late braking move because the corner narrows in so much. It was kind of a yield or we crash sort of scenario, and I think Dan Riley did the right thing there.
Or is in Kevin Magnussen's house for a reason. Fastest lap once again for George Chapman as he builds up that gap to Andrea Chenkovan. This has really been the difference between the two. Chenkovan is more than capable of keeping up with George Chapman. But over a race distance, I don't know.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that 2 laps of tyres is playing a role in this. I'm not 100% sure. I personally don't think it would. I feel like the wear is maybe 3%, if that, between the two. Maybe like a 10th a lap or something. But nothing major. So maybe it plays a role, but I don't know. Maybe it's just George Chapman has so much more consistency than Andrea Chenkovan around Las Vegas, because consistency at Vegas is quite difficult to achieve because of the nature of it and the low grip it has.
Yeah, of course, because even though it's not RNG like it was before, it's still a little bit along those lines, and these drivers are discovering that as we head through this race. We've had 18 laps of 25, and of course they've had those battles as well in qualifying, which will take it up to about 20 laps completed around this circuit at minimum. Brad Gibb gets back through on Dan Riley one more time, and well, that's not going to be the last time I say that in this race, and that's probably getting up to about 20 times I've said that now. But they are still fighting for that third place. Brad won't mind it at all, because they're not fighting each other in the corners anymore, or they haven't over the last couple of laps. Instead, they're just swapping with the DRS, which is what they probably should have done over the last, I don't know, 18 laps.
Yeah, and I think if you're Dan Riley now, you're not focused on Brad Gibb. You know you can't beat Brad Gibb unless something dramatic happens. He's got that 3-second pen. He needs to focus on building that gap to Stuart Towers behind him.
Yeah, I think that is the main thing for these two. As well, Brad won't want any threat from behind, and Dan Riley would quite like a cheeky P4 to take home, and that would be very, very helpful in his chase for that 4th place in the Drivers' Championship. Of course, he sits in 5th at the moment, with George Chapman taking that 4th last time out. Although, I'm not sure, actually, I may well be wrong about that one. But regardless, George Chapman is going to be the one to take that 3rd place, you would think, in the championship ahead. Or, sorry, behind Chenkovan and Shackleton, the 2 Ferraris, who wrapped up the constructors last time out. But yeah, that 3rd place is likely to be taken by my driver of the season at the very least, George Chapman, who came in halfway through and has absolutely dominated. Even though Chenkovan already had the title wrapped up and looked like he was the most dominant over the last few rounds, he has been threatened by George Chapman, and well, more often than not, it's gone in the Williams' favour.
Yeah, I think that bodes well for next season, having a real championship fight, like a real dicey one between those two. But George Chapman, yeah, he reminds me of what Andrea Chenkovan did in his first season. He joined season 6, he joined 2 races before I joined. He came in, was really fast, ended up finishing high up in the standings, even though he started halfway through the season. And that's exactly what George Chapman has done. You know, Andrea Chenkovan came in and won races and was fairly dominant. And then George Chapman has basically done the same thing.
Deja vu then for regular APC viewers with Andrea Chenkovan. Not necessarily fading, but not quite on the same level as George Chapman as we head to the end of the game cycle. But as we mentioned earlier, a whole new game cycle will present whole new opportunities for every single one of these drivers. Maybe we'll be seeing a championship battle between the 2 Stuart Woodards. That would be an ideal scenario in my mind. Those 2 fighting for the title, but of course with the pace they're demonstrating at the moment, wouldn't necessarily be up there. However, Kyle's improvement over the last few races has to be commended. He has gotten quicker and quicker as he's gotten used to that PC setup, although he claims it's nothing to do with the PC. But the proof is in the pudding, and he has gotten much quicker throughout the last few races. And I think he's really impressed me. Of course, today, not necessarily the same situation, but that doesn't come down to pace. That comes down to the fighting with Jack Weaver and the not staying up with Stuart, Dan and Brad, which you could put down to being the fault of Jack Weaver in terms of fighting with Kyle for that position. But at the end of the day, Kyle was still complicit in it, and he still fought for it. And he's still to blame for losing that DRS. They're trying to make it back, but 5.1 seconds is a long gap. And, well, Kyle is trying to make his way back into the DRS of Jack Weaver as well. 1.3 seconds separates the two as they head through the first sector. But they're not actually, when you look at it, the gaps aren't that big. Of course, Ethan Shackleton is the exception because he had that mistake which saw him come into pit lane. But the gaps aren't that big. Brian Moores is the second big, or Brad Gibbs is the second biggest gap with a 7.2. Brian Moores is the third biggest with a 7.3. No, with a 7.1. And then they sort of just start coming down. Of course, you've got the 5-second one for Jack Weaver. But then the next one's about 3 seconds between Chenkovan and George Chapman, and that was much closer a few laps ago. That could get much closer once again. So even though the field is split and the battles have dried up, we could be heading towards an exciting end as Dan Riley gets past Brad Gibb one more time.
I think it depends, you know. This deadlock could remain, but on the flip side, if somebody has preserved their tyres a little bit better than the rest of the field, then maybe they could carve their way through on these final few laps, so we will just have to see.
Yeah, the annoying part about commentary and the annoying part about racing in general is you don't know what the results are, unless your name is Mohammed bin Salayem or Michael Massey, but we won't get into the FIA politics, and preferably I would like to not be barred from the Formula 1 paddock for life, so I shall keep my lips sealed for the time being and not to cast any conspiracy theories about anybody or anything or anyone in the FIA. But yeah, 22 of 25. George Chapman is in the lead of the race. He's being closed in by Andrea Chenkovan, but you'd imagine that at this point it's a fuel-saving measure.
Maybe, or maybe it's just a pace thing. And that gap 2.3 with 3 laps left, it's not necessarily secure. You know, even if you're sort of 7, 8 tenths back on that last lap of going into that DRS straight, you still have a chance at the win just because DRS is so powerful. So if Chenkovan can get himself back in, that's a big if. He has a real chance at this race win.
Yeah, but the first thing is that he needs to make his way back in, and on that last lap, in fact, Chenkovan was slower than George Chapman. So Dan Riley makes his way past Brad Gibb one more time, and they still continue to swap positions for third and fourth. But of course, Dan Riley, with that 3-second time penalty, he will want that removed. Whether he'll be able to get it removed is a whole other question. But he would prefer for it to be removed. We will speak to him afterwards. He's always the keenest for the interviews, in my opinion. And well, we will be speaking to him post-race about what's happened here and more specifically what happened in the incident in the first place, because we didn't get a great view of it up here in the comms box, and Dan Riley, well, he's gotten a much better view of it in the car itself. So of anybody, he is the best one to give an opinion, although having said that, could be a biased opinion, but we'll have to wait and see. It's always as always, we will have to wait and see. But we're not far away from being able to speak to the drivers. We're not far away from the end of this Las Vegas Grand Prix. We are on lap 23 of 25. George Chapman leads the way. Looks like he may well be going on to win this race. Andrea Chenkovan is in P2. Looks like he's on his way to making his championship fight even stronger. He's not that far off now, and I believe he's going to be, after this race, if he takes home 18 points and Ethan Shackleton takes home just the 2, there's going to be how many points between the two? I'm trying to do my quick maths here. So it was
16 and
26
18.
before. How many was it?
So that'll be 42.
42 points. So that will be a steep task if Shackleton wants to challenge Andrea Chenkovan for that championship. I don't think he's going to have enough legs in it to push for it. Brad Gibb gets squeezed right to the inside line as we head on to the penultimate lap of the race. He still manages to make his way through on Dan Riley, and well, these two, they will certainly probably be bored of each other by the end of this race. but they've worked together very well to keep Stuart Tower at bay. Stuart, who's had a pretty nothing return, sitting in P5, not quite quick enough to get into the clutches of Brad, or not quite quick enough to get into range of Brad Gibb and Dan Riley, and too quick to fall back into range of Jack Weaver and Kyle Stewart Woodard, who are going for a fight. Kyle down the inside makes the move. Jack just has to sit behind, cannot quite hold his ground in that one as Ethan Shackleton pits for fastest lap. You would think at this point in the race, either that or further damage.
Fastest lap. Yeah, it's definitely for fastest lap as he heads on to soft. So probably going to get it realistically. You know, softs at the end of the race versus hards sort of at the midpoint. He's going to get fastest lap, so the gap will be 41 at the end of this race.
Yeah, I got a fastest lap the other day. My first fastest lap in a league race in a very long time. So, listen, if there's anybody to talk to about fastest laps, it's me. Brad Gibb gets overtaken by Dan Riley. Stuart Tower is in range of this battle. So I said it was pretty much over. It's not over until it's over. And Stuart Tower is back in the fight for it. Jack Weaver makes his way past with the DRS down the end of the straight on Kyle Stewart Woodard. We head down the final straight once again for the final time here at Las Vegas. And Brad Gibb, Dan Riley and Stuart Tower have all been within DRS range of each other over the last lap. Brad Gibb and Dan Riley have swapped pretty much every single lap in the DRS stretch, and there's only 2 to go. This being the first one, Brad Gibb is going to go to the inside of it and makes his way through. Stewart not close enough, and George Chapman has just picked up a 3-second time penalty for track limit warnings. So this race could just be flipped on its head, and Andriy Chenkovan 2.6 seconds behind could be stealing a victory from the jaws of defeat if George Chapman isn't able to go fast enough on this last lap of this race. Andriy Chenkovan will have seen that pop up and his eyes will have lit up as he's 2.7 seconds back. And, well, now he has the perfect opportunity to try and close in. There is 2.7 seconds between the two. You can see George Chapman in the foreground and Andriy Chenkovan in the background as they head down the straight. George will be using everything to try and build that gap back up and try and save his blushes, but he may not be able to do so. It's just jumped above 3 seconds. George Chapman may have just pulled off an absolute worldie of a final lap exactly when he needed to, and he's now 3.4 seconds ahead. So he will head around the final corner to take the victory in this race. A very nervy moment at the end, but he had the bottle, and he takes 5 in 5. What a championship this is turning out to be from George Chapman. Second place goes to the championship-elect Andriy Chenkovan, who will feel as though that race win has slipped from his fingers. Third place is going to go to Brad Gibb across the line as Stuart Tower stayed within range and Dan Riley dropped the position because of penalties. Kyle Stewart Woodard is going to come home in 6th. Not sure what's happened to Jack Weaver, but he's dropped down to P8 behind Brian Moore. And, well, Ethan Shackleton's going to bring up the rear of the field. That last lap, potentially the most dramatic last lap we've had all season.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to say it, but as soon as he got that fastest lap, I went and checked the ERS totals, and George Chapman had significantly more. Andriy Chenkovan had about 25%. George Chapman had about 70%. So that's why he was able to win it. Down that last straight, he had so much more battery power just to be able to absolutely throw at it. So a good effort from Andriy Chenkovan, but wow, it was close at the end.
There we go then. Victory for George. And, well, a performance he can certainly be proud of in this race. And, well, you can catch us very, very soon. Next week, in fact, as we head towards the final section of the season. And our next race will take us to Qatar for the next round of your APC season. We will be getting interviews, of course, very, very soon. But just give me your review on that race, Owen.
Well, A race we thought was over on that last lap all of a sudden turned into a race that very much wasn't over. George Chapman will have been holding his breath down that DRS straight, praying that Andrea Chenkovan didn't have enough ERS to maintain it, which luckily he didn't. But yeah, an interesting race. A lot of battles. The main battle being, of course, for P3, Brad Gibb, Stuart Towers, and Dan Riley fighting for that P3 pretty much the entire race. So an interesting one there. And then at the end, by the way, Brian Moore spent most of the race in P9, got himself up to P7. So a good effort there from him.
It's so crucial to keep going in a race, and that's exactly what he did today. By the way, Shackleton did end up picking up that fastest lap of the race with the 1:32. I've just thrown that back up for the purposes of the standings. But and now comes the most exciting part of the race. We get to speak to a few of the members of the racing cast here tonight. And we're going to start with Brian Moore, because why not? Brian, normally I drag you in because I go from last to first. This time, not quite the same performance. Ended up P7. Talk me through your race.
It went a lot better than I was expecting it to today. I knew that would be sort of in a world of mode, maybe fighting Connor a bit. Obviously, after last week, I just wanted to finish the race. But P7 is a lot better than I was hoping for today.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't crash at 15 miles an hour today, so I'd say it was an improvement. But I mean, P7 was a very good result for you, I think. All things considered, there was 10 drivers in the race. You came home in 7th. Talk to me about, more specifically, the what was going through your mind when Connor crashed?
I didn't even realize he crashed until the safety car comes out, if I'm being honest. I was just sort of... I knew that he was behind me. I was looking back and I was thinking I need to open that gap to DRS up as much as I could. So, well, obviously he dropped 10 seconds behind, but I was knowing that earlier in the season, especially Singapore, there's a big gap between us, and then he ended up beating me in the end. So I didn't want to repeat of that. So my focus was opening the gap up as much as he can and seeing when he pits whether I react or not. Then, well, he ended up causing a safety car that worked nicely for me.
It certainly did, and now we're looking towards the end of the season, and towards, more specifically, the championship. Of course, you're not fighting at the top, but do you think there's still hopes of you fighting with Connor for that 6th place in the championship? You were before this race on 82. Connor was on 100, and I think now you're going to take home. What would that be? That would be 6 points. So you're going to be on 88. You're going to be 12 points behind with 2 races to go.
I mean, Qatar, I think Qatar's next.
Yep.
Let me just check the yeah, so Qatar next is a decent track for me, but not sure how he fares there. Abu Dhabi, bit of a different track for me, but we'll see.
Owen, have we got anything before we let Brian go?
No, you've covered it there.
Beautiful. Well, let's see if I can go whatever it was last time, 5 out of 5. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us, Brian. Thank you very much for racing, and well, good luck in Qatar.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, next we shall bring in... tell you who would be interesting to bring in, Dan Riley. But just before we do that, I'm going to bring in Carl Stewart Woodard and talk to him about his race. We're going to go in a different order. This week. We had Brian first up, as per usual, but we're going to bring Carl in second to talk about his race. So talk me through it.
I wasn't ready for that. I was on my feet up. I was relaxed. I was like, I'm going to be pulled in last, you know. Well, to be fair, it was a little bit heated in the waiting room there. I mean, I don't know why Jack was so aggressive. I think it was unnecessary. I mean, like, obviously I'll watch it back, but like on the safety car restart, I obviously had better pace. I think if, you know, he had just ceded the position, like it was, I had the position, like we could have both kept with the lead train, and then we could have all fought later towards the end of the race to see who would end up, you know, we could both possibly, very possibly, unlikely, but possibly gone for the win. But you know, we both had the pace today, but he decided to fight me for an entire lap, which meant we lost the train, and that was race done at that point. Unless there was another safety car, there was no way we were bringing ourselves back in. But he's adamant that it was my fault. He said I, you know, shouldn't have been there, whatever. Like I don't know. I think it was unnecessary. Like I had good pace. I could have said I could have been ahead of Dan. You know, yeah, I don't know. It just really annoyed me because, like, first stint I fell out on my own, managed to get it back, Yeah, I don't know. I had the pace. I had the pace of so much more today, so I'm just a bit frustrated. I don't know why he needed to be so aggressive. It ruined his own race as well. So, like, I don't really know what he planned to achieve there. But yeah, unfortunately, that's the way it was. And then, I don't really know what happened at the end. That might be my fault. I don't know. That'll be down to the stewards if it gets reported on that sort of last lap. I was kind of going for the corner, and then he just happened to still be there when I was turning in. So that would be down to the stewards. I mean, I don't really know, but yeah, the whole middle of the race is unnecessary. There was a bit as well. I don't know if you caught it when I came round the fast right hander, and he was just there, like not moving, and there was nowhere for me to go. I mean, we almost both lost it. So yeah, I don't know. It's all down to Jack today, unfortunately. Like, I don't know what the need for that was.
It'll be interesting to get his perspective on that one. But yeah, I think
I can tell you already he doesn't agree, so you can be ready for that.
Well, that'll be a good interview to get in next then, or maybe potentially at the same time.
I wouldn't, because the way he was talking in the waiting room would be the kind of thing that would get us taken off YouTube. So maybe get him in when I'm not here to defend myself, because he might be a bit calmer.
That and, well, apparently being the 2022 British Grand Prix or whatever it was that we were compared to once when we got copyright strike. But anyway,
yeah, that was a funny one. Yeah.
It was a race which saw your quote-unquote title rival, of course, not at the top, but for that P3, what will be probably P4 after George Chapman barges his way
P4,
through.
Yeah.
Dan Riley took a decent chunk of points out of you. What are your thoughts heading into the last two rounds?
I think it was only 2 points in the end, wasn't it? Because he had his 3-second penalty.
I
mean, I know he's trying to get that taken away, so that'll be down to the stewards. But yeah, he was only a position ahead of me in the end, which is kind of lucky. Because but I mean, I could have finished ahead of him today. I had the pace too, so a little bit frustrating. But if it's only 2 points, then I'm still ahead. After the last race, it's kind of really helped me to stay ahead. So yeah, as you say, George will come past. There's no stopping him. But yeah, I just got to keep consistent for the last two races. Make sure Dan doesn't take any crazy points out of me. But yeah, no, it was good. Obviously, my brother had to crash out, so he was my engineer for the rest of that race, which was quite helpful. But once me and Jack had lost the train, it was done from there anyway.
Yeah, it certainly seemed to be the case. Owen, have you got anything before we let Carl go back and have some fisticuffs with Jack before we pull him in?
Just one. Is the incident with Jack something you're going to take to the stewards, or do you think he's going to do that?
Towards the end of the race, or which one?
The one that he was really angry about on the safety car restart.
Oh, look, I think I think he raced like within the rules. I just think it was aggressive and unnecessary, and I think without that we would have both kept with the lead train. I think he ruined both of our races for no reason, just because he wanted to stay ahead of me. But that I wouldn't say what he had, how that drive. I wouldn't say that driving was against the rules. I would just say it's damaging to both of our races for no reason. So no need to bring it to the stewards. I assume he won't. I can't see what he's going to try and say I did wrong. The one at the very end, again, I say I don't know. I don't know if he went on his own or what. But so that would be down to him whether he takes that last one to the stewards. But no, the safety car restart, it was aggressive, unnecessary, but not against the rules. It just all we did was ruin both our races.
And I hope you've said, before I let you go, I hope you've said, or if not, you do say now, the classic line that I've teed myself up for so many times today. You're going to be so proud of me. As the league admin, I feel like you only have one joke you can make with Jack Weaver. And to
be fair, when we were in the waiting room, he told me to shut up, and I did tell him that he had no authority.
But yeah. Guys, I think I made about 4 of those jokes throughout the broadcast. Anyway,
yeah, you did. You did about 4 or 5.
I'm looking forward to hearing that back.
But yeah, I had a couple of good ones. But anyway, that'll be one.
I also think I'm gonna get clipped.
Oh no!
Because I said something in the race, and I realised immediately after what I'd said, and then Joseph picked up on it as well. I'll let you find.
I'm looking forward to that. I will find that. Don't you worry.
Anyway, we'll let you go. We'll save that one for post broadcast. But
thanks, guys.
Oh, good. Right, and then we shall bring in. We'll go straight from 1 in the battle to get the perspective of the other one. Hello, Jack.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. Talk me through that race. We'll get to we'll get to you and Kyle in a minute, but just talk me through the rest of the race first.
I think I started off well, and then obviously at the end I was getting dived left, right, and centre. And the fact he's saying I'm aggressive is absolutely ridiculous, and he needs to grow up. If I'm honest, because if you look at any of those clips, I have not done anything wrong there. I've left him plenty of space, and it's his problem. At the end, he's gone into me and he sent me into a barrier. So,
is that from your perspective what happened on the last lap? Because we didn't see anything. Kyle claimed that
no,
there wasn't
he
any
sent me
damage,
into a barrier. He's just hit into my rear and sent me into a barrier.
And you're going to take it to the stewards, I presume?
I will, because it wasn't fair, and it wasn't fair racing. Obviously, I let him through, but he was over aggressive on every move. And the fact he's saying I was aggressive is ridiculous. Because if you look at the clip later on in the driver's chat, the move I sent on him was definitely not bad because he had loads of room and he went into the wall himself.
His perspective was that was one of your moves were fair and within the racing rules, but unnecessary, I think was the direct quote that I can take from him.
I disagree because I think personally I made good moves and I didn't make unnecessary moves into any sector. I bided my time and I got round perfectly fine down the straight.
It's good to get both sides of a story, as I just said to Carl. There is two sides to every story.
I'm honestly a bit annoyed by the fact he said I'm over aggressive, to be honest, because that is not the case at all. And if anything, he sent me into a barrier and he hasn't apologised for it, so totally ruined my race.
We'll have to wait and see what the stewards have to say about that one. Owen, have you got anything for Jack before we let him go?
No, I think we got the bulk of what we wanted to hear.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Jack, for being here this week. And, hopefully we'll be seeing you next week in Qatar.
Yeah, hopefully.
Right, well, that was somebody who wasn't particularly happy. I think that's fair to say. And, that's somebody with... I don't know if I'm wording this in the right way, an agenda on his mind or an opinion on his mind that he felt the need to get out, which rightly or wrongly, of course. But everyone's entitled to their own opinion. We will see what the stewards have to say about it, and that will probably be the first thing we discuss next week. We have gone in a different order today. Normally, we go for Dan Riley first. This time, we're going for him third to last, I think it is. Well, hello, Dan. Talk us through your race.
Well, I mean, first off, it went much better than last race. I led the first lap, which was pretty good. I just did that for pride, to be fair. I felt like I had the pace for a podium. The two drivers, George and Chenky, were just way too fast for me. But then I'm kind of annoyed, to be fair, because there was one point where I did get a 3-second time penalty. If I am going to be honest, I have reported it, because I felt like it should have been removed, because I felt like Kyle did force me off. I don't know if we were going 3 wide or not, but I was definitely forced wide by Kyle. I was ahead of the apex. The clip is he's literally forced me off, and that made me get a 3-second time penalty. So I did report that. Hopefully it does get removed, but I had a really good battle with Brad. I had the 3-second time penalty, so I tried to get ahead of was it Stuart, I think? So yeah, I tried to get ahead of Stuart, but I felt like Brad was going slow on purpose. I was literally crashing out that entire session. But I felt like I had a good race with him. Yeah, he made a really good overtake to get P3 for him. And yeah, hopefully I do get P4 in that race. But we'll see what the stewards think.
Yeah, I think it was a pretty good one from you personally. It seemed pace-wise. You came under criticism, Owen, if you don't mind me saying. You came under criticism from Owen, if you don't mind me saying, about the way you approached the first lap, and he felt as though you could have, had you had a bit more temperament to stay behind and not just led for glory, as it were. Then he reckoned that you could have been in for a top 2 position. Of course, that safety car would have thrown you out of whack, but he genuinely reckoned, and I think I don't disagree with him that you were going to be in for that as a chance at a podium position at the very least. I think is how I would word it. So, did you think at any point in that proceeding the same as me and Owen, or did you have a different opinion?
I mean, it's kind of like 50-50. I didn't think there was going to be a safety car. I mean, we don't know these things, to be fair. I literally burnt all my ERS trying to gap or try and get at the start. But I mean, to be fair, I think Cenk would have caught up to me anyway. And even if I did keep up with those two, the safety car would have just what do you call it? Just kept up the pack. And I'm actually crashing out also because Kyle gained a space on me in the pit lane because I was stuck behind two Haas drivers. They were both double stacking and I couldn't leave my pit box. So I did forget about that. I still am crashing out about that and how Kyle gained a position on me. I was literally crashing out for 5 minutes and how lucky Kyle has been for this entire season. But yeah, I kind of do disagree with you guys with that comment. But yeah, to be fair, I did want that glory at the start of the race. I can't lie.
That's fair enough. Well, I mean, speaking of that battle between yourself and Carl for the championship, do you think 2 races to go? I think it was 16 points between you after this one, and it'll be a hell of a lot more if you do get that penalty removed. Do you think it's still on?
Yeah, hopefully I do get that penalty removed. See what the stewards think. But do I think I'll get P4 in the championship? Right now, no. But who knows? Maybe he might DNF in the next race and I get a P2. I don't know these things, but the mentality I've been trying to go through in these next 3 races, or next 2 races, if we've already driven this one, is I'm just absolutely going to send it into every turn 1 in these next races. I sent it into this corner in this Las Vegas race and it paid off. So I'm going to definitely do that in Qatar, which is a circuit I'm pretty good at. I wouldn't say I'm really good, but I'm average at. But I am really excited for Abu Dhabi. Obviously, Bahrain is my favourite circuit. I was literally like 1/10 off of Cenk in qualifying. I'll probably be like 2/10 off of him in Abu Dhabi. It's my second best circuit I'm at, so I'm really looking forward to Abu Dhabi. Maybe even get a race win, because I do think I am really fast at Abu Dhabi, but we'll see how it is. Hopefully I can get P4 in the championship, but it's looking unlikely, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's never over until it's over. I've only got one more question, and that is, do you have a race director in the report? Because George Chapman claims that you do not.
Yeah, I didn't. I forgot about that, and yeah, he did tell me. I think you do need it.
Yeah.
You do need it. That's disappointing because I really do think I could have got that penalty removed, but yeah, I mean the stewards haven't been kind to me this season, so yeah, who knows what would have happened? I guess.
Yeah, it's one of those where you'd never quite know. Owen, have we got anything?
Nope, not from me.
Perfect. Well, I've almost been perfect today, not quite, but yeah, Dan, I'll let you go. Congrats on your... wasn't quite a podium, but congrats on your podium pace today, and we'll see you in Qatar.
That's right. Cheers.
Oh, everyone wants an interview today. We'll bring in Brad next to talk us through his race. So, well, Brad, take it away.
Hello. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so just about the race in general, it was tough after maybe, I think it was, the first 7 laps, broke the wing. A bit embarrassing, in my opinion, from Daniel Riley's point of view, being overtaken by a guy with half a wing. But, double stacked then, and it was on to me to, pick up points for the team and try work myself up the grid. Did that. Yeah, just going back to what Daniel Riley said, oh yeah, he had the pace for all this. You can say this, but at the end of the day, he didn't. And then I believe he said something about me slowing down. I don't know what he's on about. It's just my rear tyres going. But yeah, you can say if, but I think he's talking it out of his ass. Pardon my French.
Yeah, it's well, we've certainly had a fair few drivers upset today. I think that's fair to say, and well, a couple of spats going on should bode well for the next season, and especially for the next couple of races. We've got Qatar next. How are you feeling for it?
Yeah, good. Hopefully, not behind Daniel Riley, or don't have to fight him. Hopefully fight, better drivers like Jamie and Ferraris. Maybe Jack, to be honest, if his race isn't ruined. But yeah, hopefully we can do well, to be honest.
Yeah, well, and we'll certainly see about that. For the championship, I know you've joined a little bit too late for it to matter, really. But do you think that you'll be able to take that 8th place? I think there's, if I can do my quick maths, there's going to be how many points between the two? 44 minus whatever you got today, which was 15, I believe. So that is going to be 29. Do you think you're going to be able to overturn 29 points in 2 races?
No, hopefully, but to be honest, it's not the aim. Just these few races, getting early. It's just a bit of a practice before the proper season, and then push on and try to do well.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. You've got to commend my mental maths, though. Come on.
Yeah.
Owen, have we got anything?
Yeah, I've got one thing. Obviously, you and Dan Riley seem to have opposing views on it. Do you feel, though, that the racing was fair between you two?
Yeah, I think it was fair. I'm just, I think it was fair. I just, in my opinion, I don't know what he was speaking about with me slowing down and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, if you can't get your way, people will complain. But yeah, it was a nice bit to overtake him at the end and just show him who's the better driver.
Yeah, well, I mean, do your talking on the track, I think, is what I'd say to many of the drivers this evening. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and see you in Qatar.
Yeah, okay, have a great night.
You too. Why does everybody hate each other today? It feels like
I really don't know. Yeah, it seems like everybody is on the attack on each other.
Everyone's just got a spat. Anyway, it makes for an entertaining evening at the very least. And well, we've got a man here who, well, surely he can't hate anybody this evening because he didn't see anybody pretty much all evening. George, talk us through that race.
Well, hello guys. I mean, it was a great quali for me. I think maybe if I got a bit of DRS, hopefully I could have, not DRS, sorry, a bit of a slipstream in qualifying would have been better for me. But I'll take P2 in the qualifying. I'm fine with that. The race was pretty good for me. Had no troubles except for the first stint. I will say I'm not trying to start beef or anything, but
oh, no.
I will say that there could have been a little bit better driving from likes of Daniel Riley. I have watched probably the whole stream during my race and did see a lot of incidents that I will say are not very professional of him. But like I said, I'm not trying to start anything. I think Brad and Jack were definitely on for a double podium today. But yeah, I mean, struggles all round from everyone, I think. We all struggle with tyre wear, so... But for me, I can't complain.
Well, yeah, I mean, it seemed to be not necessarily a domination the whole time, but it was something pretty akin to it. I mean, there was one point at which Schenkervan looked like he was closing in on you in that final stint. Were you fuel saving, or was it just that Schenkervan had the pace for a couple of laps and he was going flat out?
If I'm being 100% honest, I'm underfueled by quite a lot, and I didn't realise it in the final lap. So my goal was to really just try and save a little bit of fuel towards the end. I think after I fuel saved, I somehow did the fastest lap. I was not expecting that. But yeah, I mean, I can't really complain. Schenkervan, he's such a good racer. He's really good pace. I think my advantage today was probably just how I managed my tyres and DRS.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. Of course, all those components do have an effect in a Formula One car. Championship-wise, Do you think you've got enough in you to take that 4th place pretty easily?
Well, I mean, I think I've got the 4th place now, actually.
Or 3rd place, sorry, what I meant.
It's all right. But yeah, I strongly agree that I'll go for P3. I mean, I said it when I joined on the first interview. I'm going for P3 no matter what. But yeah, I think I'm like 13 points odd behind. So, especially with Kyle's terrible driving today. I mean, who says I can't take P3?
I mean, yeah, we'll have to wait and see how it develops. And well, Owen, have you got anything?
No, not today.
No, wonderful. Well, I got the final bit right. I got 5 out of 5. So you can use that snippet for anything you feel necessary. I did actually get it right this week. I was very proud of myself. So,
I'm very happy.
Wonderful. Well, we will let you go then back into the waiting room. And
Thank you.
See you on guitar. Right, that's everybody that we had to speak to this evening. Nothing from half of the grid, but the other half of the grid, very opinionated, to say the very least. And, well, that bodes well for the end of the season. We're going to have a dramatic one. We've got 2 rounds left to go. And, well, May the 27th. Be there. Until next time, it is goodbye.
Goodbye.
And we're underway and racing. Stay on the brakes, goodness me, what a launch! The outside of turn 1,